tonight on First at 9, this Thursday, the 29th of August 2024. Battle of Policies. Economic policy experts representing the four main presidential candidates debate on economic policies and pledges ahead of the 2024 presidential election. Define solution. The impact of the current economic crisis is likely to continue for the next decade, warns expert. Highlights that current presidential candidates have primarily focused on securing power and have not provided clear proposals for renegotiating the IMF deal. Power devolution. President Ranil Wickremesinghes unveils election manifesto. Vows to devolve powers to provincial councils under the 13th Amendment and promises to submit a proposal for devolving police powers to be passed in Parliament. Paved path. Opposition leader Samaga Jana Balawega unveils its election manifesto. SJB will adhere to the current IMF deal, reveal party representatives. Conditions of the deal to be discussed with the international lender.
ඔබේ විශ්වාසය දිනු සෙන්සුරයින් දැන් ළඟමැති ෆාමසියෙන් ලබා ගත හැක.
This is Derana First at 9, live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to tonight's edition of Derana First at 9. I'm Tarindu Mahendra, joining you live with the latest in Sri Lanka and from around the world. In your top story, President Ranil Wickremesinghes today unveiled his election manifesto for the 2024 presidential election, themed 5 years of victory for Sri Lanka with Ranil. The president has listed reducing the cost of living, creating more employment opportunities, providing tax relief, converting to an export-oriented economy and delivering the Urume and Aswasma welfare programs as the key targets for his potential second term in office. The manifesto also proposes the devolving of powers to provincial councils under the 13th Amendment to the Constitution, while the devolution of police powers will be submitted to the next Parliament for approval. President Ranil Wickremesinghes' election manifesto for the 2024 presidential election, themed 5 years of victory for Sri Lanka with Ranil, was unveiled earlier today. During the event held to mark the occasion, the president's election campaign website www.ranil2024.lk was also launched. The manifesto has been compiled with a focus on 5 key targets. These include reducing the cost of living, creating more employment opportunities, providing tax relief, converting to an export-oriented economy, and delivering and expanding the Urume and Aswasma welfare programs. The manifesto proposes a 25,000 rupee cost of living allowance and a minimum increase of 24% in starting basic salaries for public service employees. Accordingly, the minimum salary for the lowest paid positions will be 55,000 rupees. The manifesto also proposes to eliminate all discrepancies in pensions. A pension and social welfare program have been proposed for the labour force in the informal sector. The manifesto also proposes to create 100,000 new employment opportunities within the year 2025. Annual tourist arrivals are to be increased from 2.5 million to 5 million, with new tourist zones being established in Iranavilla, Bentota, Haputale and Valimada over the next 5 years. A new authority has been proposed to oversee the Urume Freehold Land and Housing Deed Initiative, which the President expects to complete within 4 years. It has also been proposed to grow Sri Lanka's digital economy from 5 to 15 billion US dollars within the next 5 years. The manifesto proposes to devolve powers to provincial councils pursuant to the 13th Amendment to the Constitution and to submit the resolution to devolve police powers to the next Parliament for approval. The Truth, Unity and Reconciliation Commission Act will be enforced in order to resolve issues faced by the Tamil and Muslim communities in the north and east of the country, while the recommendations of the Nawaz Commission will be followed in relation to missing persons. Additionally, the manifesto proposes to provide financial support for reformed ex-LTTE members for self-employment.
The proposals that we have presented today can be implemented within a short period of time. We stabilize the economy by 2023. Now, in order to protect that stability, Sri Lanka's economy has to be transformed into an export economy. That is the framework within which we intend to work. We do not want to destroy the economy economy by issuing promises. If we fall into the same situation again, the youth will not have a future. Everyone is talking about tackling corruption. We, however, have introduced legislations to tackle corruption. We introduced several laws under the National Anti-Corruption Agenda and more are being drafted. Others only talk, but we act. When others say no, we said yes. Cast your votes in front of the gas cylinder symbol on the 21st of September so that we can recommence our work on the 22nd.
Horizon Campus 2024 Intake 2. Register now.
Crunchy goodness for hunger on the go.
The Samagi Jana Balawege pledges to transform the existing constitution to create a parliamentary system with the maximum distribution of powers based on the 13th Amendment. The SJB revealed these commitments in their 2024 election manifesto, which was unveiled today. In its manifesto, the SJB pointed out that building a strong economy and empowering every citizen of the country will be the priorities of an SJB-led government. The election manifesto of the Samagi Jana Balawege named Samata Jayak was launched today. The presidential candidate of the Samagi Jana Balawege led Samagi Jana Sandhanaya, opposition leader Sajith Premadasa presented the manifesto to the chief prelates of the Askeri and Malwatu chapters this afternoon. The manifesto primarily focuses on building a strong economy, empowering every citizen of the country, enhancing the country's public sector and securing quality of life and national security. Additionally, it also proposes to amend the ongoing economic program to meet the income targets set by the IMF agreement and grant necessary relief to people below the poverty line during times of need. The personal income tax will be limited to 24% starting from 1% after the tax-free category of 0.5 million rupees per month. Following the increase of tax revenue, it has been proposed to reduce the value-added tax to 15% and to essential food items and consumer goods from the value-added tax. The manifesto also proposes to provide a guaranteed interest rate of up to 15% for senior citizens' savings. A low-interest loan scheme through public and private banks will also be established in order to enhance the economic status of the fishing community. In addition, low-interest loan facilities will be granted to convert the combustion engines of three-wheelers into electric engines in order to save the daily cost of petrol of three-wheeler drivers. The manifesto further states that the current constitution will be transformed into a parliamentary system based on the 13th Amendment to the Constitution with maximum division of powers. Representatives of the Samagi Jana Balawege held a media briefing today following the launch of their manifesto.
President
Ranil Wickremesinghes has launched his election manifesto themed Puluwan Sri Lanka. His manifesto mentions about a Theravada economy. President Ranil Wickremesinghes' principle is to protect those who led the country to bankruptcy while burdening the general public. However, we are against that move. We are implementing measures to burden those who are capable of handling that burden.
බර දැරීමට කටයුතු කිරීම.
ආතන්තර මූලාර මුදලත් එක්ක යම්කිසි එකඟතාවයකට ඇවිල්ලා තියෙනවා.
We have entered into an agreement with the IMF at present and it is crucial that we follow this agreement in future. This is a building built on the analysis of debt sustainability. We are of the view that several changes can be made in the rooms of this building. We can alter the sizes of these rooms. However, this building will collapse if we attempt to change the foundation of this building. We had extensive deliberations with the IMF. During the discussions, we agreed to change the sizes of those rooms.
The manifesto of the Samagi Jana Balawege will be released to the public on the 4th of September. The presidential candidate and leader of the National People's Power, Anura Kumara assures that he and his party will direct the country in a new direction that will allow Sri Lanka to achieve economic development. Addressing an election campaign rally in Polonnaruwa, Dissanayake went on to say that punishing the corrupt politicians who dragged Sri Lanka into the economic crisis will be a priority for an NPP-led government. Another public rally to support the presidential candidate and the leader of the National People's Power, Anura Dissanayake, was held yesterday in Polonnaruwa.
මේ 21 වෙනිදා ගන්න
The public have to make a choice between two options during the upcoming presidential election on the 21st September. One of them is the failed governance which existed in the country, which led to the downfall of the country. People can choose that path. However, on the other hand, people can join the journey led by the NPP, which leads the country towards a new direction to reach economic development. We have only these two options. People will never regret their choice to elect an NPP government. Everyone should be content with their decision. Even former President Maithripala Sirisena claimed that he would bring the Rajapakses before the law and recover everything that was stolen by them. However, within 3 years of assuming duties, he appointed Mahinda Rajapakse as the Prime Minister. Similarly, in 2019, Gotabaya Rajapakse said that Ranil Wickremesinghes will be punished for his involvement in the CBSL bond scam. To punish those connected to the CBSL bond scam, the public voted for Gotabaya. What happened in 2.5 years? Gotabaya appointed Ranil Wickremesinghes as his Prime Minister. The NPP will come into power to punish the corrupt.
Presidential candidate of Sri Lanka Podu Jana Peramuna Namal Rajapakse says that political interference in the public service will be eliminated under his governance. Addressing a rally in Akurasa, Rajapakse went on to say that an SLPP-led government will integrate technology into government services and establish a digitized public service. An election campaign rally organised by the Sri Lanka Podu Jana Peramuna pledging its support to the party's presidential candidate Namal Rajapakse was held in Akurasa yesterday.
When the COVID-19 spread across the country, they predicted that 45,000 people would die. So they insisted that instead of focusing on the death toll, the country's development should be prioritized. However, the leader we appointed prioritized saving lives over the economy, reducing the death toll to 14,000. Due to the economic crisis, we had to take a step back, but we did so with the goal of achieving victory within 2 years at the presidential election.
They say that Namal is too young and not suitable for presidential nomination. However, the global political landscape is increasingly shifting power to the younger generation. During the recent struggle, what did the youth demand? They called for power to be handed over to the younger generation. Even if the government removes us from our ministerial positions, we will still protect the Rajapakse campaign, which has both developed and secured this country.
Increasing government employees' salaries should not be an election promise. Instead, salary increase should be implemented by taking inflation into account. Currently, there are significant wage disparities within the government sector. We are committed to addressing these inequalities. We will put an end to political interference in government job appointments and postings. Although the government claims to have eliminated queues, the reality is that passport queue continues to grow longer. This problem could easily be solved through the use of technology, but the current government has failed to embrace technological advancements. Whether you are obtaining a passport or an ID, no one should have to endure long waits in line. We will integrate technology into government services and deliver public service through digitalization. I accept the responsibility of developing our country and paving the way for the younger generation.
Presidential candidate of the Sarva Jana Sandhane, Dilith Jayavira, signed a Memorandum of Understanding with representatives of 65 national organisations today to oppose the Truth and Reconciliation Act recently passed in Parliament. At an event held in Columbo today, Jayavira stated that instead of using the Truth-Seeking Commission to punish war veterans, it should be employed to address corruption among politicians in the country. During the event themed Defeating the Malicious Mission of Betraying War Veterans through the Truth-Seeking Commission, the agreement was signed by presidential candidate Dilith Jayavira and representatives of 65 national organisations.
I believe it is my responsibility to become a presidential candidate at a time when the government is on the verge of establishing the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Therefore, we must expose the leaders in this country who are behind this Truth and Reconciliation deal. They are willing to betray anyone for their personal gain. Yes, we need a Truth-Seeking Commission, but we need it to uncover the invisible forces funding these leaders, those who fund multiple rallies in one day, the leaders who have stolen the peaceful sleep from the soldiers who sacrificed their lives to save the country.
Star dishwasher Dally Hill Indul Pahasuwen Sede. Star dishwasher Magic Tub එක.
Crunchy goodness for hunger on the go.
චන්දුරුසුමේ කාගෙත් මන අපේ සිග TV සඳහා සුපිරි ඩීල්.
Welcome back. Senior economist Dr. Ahilan Kadiragamer states that the current presidential candidates are primarily focused on securing more power and do not fully understand the severity of the economic crisis facing the country. Joining our current affairs program at Hyde Park within the Iveriyamuwatta, Dr. Kadiragamer stated that the impact of the economic crisis is expected to last for another decade. Commenting on the agreements reached with the International Monetary Fund, Dr. Kadiragamer noted that the current agreement is not in Sri Lanka's best interest. He added that although several parties have promised to renegotiate with the IMF following the election, the terms have not been clearly defined.
We are talking about Sri Lanka's economic policy and how we should move forward. So what should be our economic policy going forward?
This is the worst economic crisis that Sri Lanka is going through since independence and perhaps even earlier, probably since the Great Depression of the 1930s. This is the kind of crisis that affects generations. It will have intergenerational impact. Clearly, the country needs to shift direction because there is tremendous amount of suffering among the people. Because regardless, this is going to be a long drawn-out crisis. This is not something that we're going to come out in a year or two. In my view, this crisis is probably still going to last another 5-10 years, and survival is critical. Sri Lanka is not the only country going through this kind of crisis. Close to 72 countries in the global south are in debt distress. Close to a dozen countries, like Sri Lanka, have already defaulted on their external debt, and they're trying to restructure their debt in some form.
Do you think our candidates really understand the current grave situation as you explain?
My sense is at the current moment, all the candidates are only thinking of coming to power. They have not made their strategy or the way in which they can come out of this economic crisis clear enough. There have been some ideas that they have put forward, but they certainly haven't mobilized the people to face the kind of long drawn-out crisis that our country is going to face. So regardless of who is elected, on day one, when they come to power, they're going to face very serious challenges. And unless they can then gather the country together and to move forward systematically addressing these problems, it's going to be very difficult. Now, they have said that they will renegotiate it, particularly SJB and NPP. But on what terms will they renegotiate it is the big question.
Dr. Kadiragamer, when you say the IMF program should be renegotiated, are you saying that this deal has not been struck in the advantage of Sri Lanka, in the best interest of Sri Lanka? Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. I would say that government just went along with the IMF without even negotiating what they could have negotiated in the interests of the country. The problem is that the IMF, its interests are aligned with the creditors. The biggest shareholder in the IMF is the United States and Western countries, and they serve their own interests. The bondholders, the big hedge funds who are located in New York and London. So it is for us to negotiate hard in terms of our own interests.
India's National Security Advisor Ajit K. Doval arrived in Colombo today to review the progress of the Colombo Security Conclave initiative. The Conclave is a regional security initiative that was started as a trilateral effort between India, Sri Lanka and the Maldives and has since expanded to include the Mauritius and Bangladesh as members, with Seychelles participating as an observer. During his visit, Doval is also expected to visit various Sri Lankan political leaders in Colombo. The Indian High Commission in Colombo officially handed over the first installment of the Indian grant assistance for the hybrid power projects in 3 islands of Jaffna, Delft, Nainitiv and Arnolaitiv. The project, funded by a $11 million grant from India aimed at addressing energy needs of the people of the 3 islands which are not connected to the national grid will combine various forms of energy including both solar and wind. Initial work of the project has commenced at the 3 sites and the project is scheduled to be completed by early March 2025. Welcome back. State Minister of Finance Wickremesinghes assured that the Economic Transformation Act, which was passed in Parliament this year, will prevent the reversal of policies that the government has embarked on to achieve economic growth. He made these comments while addressing a debate in Columbo. Parliamentarian of the Samagi Jana Balawega, Dr. Harsh De Silva, meanwhile, highlighted the necessity of ensuring growth in the tradable front and personal income tax cuts under the IMF program, which their government expects to amend in the future. Meanwhile, SLPP parliamentarian Professor Ranjit Bandara says their party is looking at a policy on growth similar to that during the tenure of former President Mahinda Rajapakse. Executive Committee member of the National People's Power Dr. Harshana Surya Peruma affirmed that a new debt sustainability analysis will be presented to the IMF under an NPP government.
A debate theme defining a vision, a decisive forum on Sri Lanka's economic future organised by the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce was held in Colombo this morning.
What is your program that you all have in mind to bring growth?
Hopefully we will reach somewhere around 4% growth this year. The moment we stabilize, there is a tendency to reverse. We have a plan on this. The main reason why we introduced the economic transformation law was aimed at this plan. So now we have a law in place. The law has targets. It is answerable to Parliament, and it is the duty of any government to ensure that you deliver what is being specified in the law, and if there is a deviation, then still there is a way out to that also to ensure that the country won't return back to a crisis.
We've heard your presidential candidate say that under him the government would look at renegotiating the IMF terms and conditions. Now in this context, can you tell us the parameters you're looking at to renegotiate?
For us, the problem in the IMF agreement is for them, debt is debt, growth is growth. And we say no, debt is our external debt, domestic debt. And we need tradable growth and non-tradable growth. So what we told the IMF is what we need to ensure that we are safe, our debt is sustainable on the external front, is to ensure that we have growth on the tradable front. Now, we need to link those two things. To us, this agreement is more like an extended SBA than an extended fund facility. So therefore, some tilting of the economy, making sure the incentive structures are right so that it is more profitable for investors like yourselves to put money in internationally competitive production rather than sort of be protected behind protection, large protective walls, and to be inefficient and yet make money hand over fist and sometimes even think of running for president. The other issue we've told the IMF is about equity in taxes. A lot of middle class people working up to say getting 500,000 rupees a month is getting hammered at 36% highest marginal tax rate at 308,000 rupees a month. Can you live with that? But at the same time, we have undertaken to deliver 15.4%. So like I said, on the taxes, we are not changing the DSA parameters. So on that basis, what I explained is our middle class tax cut.
Can you embark on a policy of big government, public sector infrastructure the same way that you have done in the past?
This is an integrated growth model where we have state priority.
What is the state priority you're talking?
National interest, economic growth, social progression, environmental sustainability, and which is integrated, connected to each other. You can't look at anything in isolation. Say for example, economic growth. Can it happen in isolation? No. You have to have a holistic approach.
You have the same approach. What's the different outcome we can
Look here, this is not just state priority. It's connected with 4 pillars. Look at the second pillar, innovation. What we do innovate, state sector, agriculture sector, manufacturing sector, service sector. We need to innovate. You can have dreams, you can have raised voice with lots of emotions. And if you looked at the investment, entrepreneurship, human resources development, research for commercialization, infrastructure. These are new adding into, I told very specifically the policy framework that we are looking at is very simple, which is proven.
You have said you are going to adjust the DSA. If the DSA is amended, we do not know whether IMF will stay in the program, from what we understand.
A DSA is necessary for a country to negotiate based on their basis. What is the projection? What are the outflows? What are the inflows? What's the external sector going to be, etc.? How are you going to refinance? At what point you will reach your debt sustainability? In order to do that, one way is to, obviously IMF has given their DSA model. What we are saying is we will do our own DSA, which we are on the process of finalizing with the input of industry and the experts, which we are doing at the moment. We will have a basis for discussion with IMF. Principle number one is we have clearly mentioned we will not derail from the IMF program. Country is not in a position to do that. It will be within the IMF
very
program.
clear our remaining the IMF program.
Yes.
In one of the election promises in the en route to the election was that your candidate is going to adjust public sector salaries, and then yesterday you already announced that you all were wanting to reduce pay tax as well. In this context, how are you going to manage the primary targets and fiscal targets here?
All announcements are based on the 2.3% primary balance target. We can't deviate from that. And secondly, I think the tax revision what the President announced was something which we have been discussing since September 2023. Because we also understand when the economy is growing and we need to give a substantial share of that growth back to the public. This will cost around 0.07% of the GDP, and that we will have compensating measures, but will ensure that there is no further burden on the general masses.
Previously, successive governments have identified that they are going to bring revenue on paper. But how are you going to practically make it happen? Because there is a whole change you need to do that. How are you going to do it?
The fundamental of this change is through digitalization. If India can do it, if Aadhaar does it, if you have the Pangwala selling bulat on a QR code, that revenue comes to Mahinda. Currently it doesn't. Even look at, some people are talking about withholding tax on interest. Think about it. How many people are evading? How many people are underreporting? So, is there an opportunity to take at source something on the withholding tax on interest and fees without jeopardizing the actual burden on the people but increasing compliance? There are ways to do this.
And that's all the news for today. Thank you for joining and have a good night.